So we will be focusing on emerging host cities, host countries, new places, getting into the game of bidding for and eventually winning the rights to host major events. What are some of the opportunities for new places, new cities, new regions, emerging countries, some of the opportunities for them to host events? What are some of the challenges to get into the game? And when they win the right to host, some of the challenges of actually hosting these games. It's something we hear a lot about now from various places around the world. And to guide you in these discussions and the many questions we hopefully will have from you, we have a fantastic panel with us that will cover this topic from different angles. Next to me, we have Hessa Al-Kus, who is the event manager at the Dubai Sports Council, our host here. And Hessa is focusing in her work on the events, on the event strategy and the implementation of the event strategy of Dubai. Next to Hessa, we have Jamil Fay, who is the CEO and founder of the sports entertainment agency Japo. Japo is one of the few agencies that is focusing its work on the African continent. And Jamil has been working with many African organizations, cities, regions, guiding them in their event work. On a side note, Jamil was also one of the key advisors for the successful Tokyo 2020 Olympic bid. Next to Jamil is Jens Holm. Jens Holm is the CEO of International World Masters Games Association. The World Masters Games is one of the largest participation events in the world, moving to different places, and Jens and his team are overseeing the development of the games, and it'll be interesting to hear something about whether participation events, not only the top elite events, but also major participation events, maybe focusing on tourist development, could be something of interest for emerging cities and countries. Next to Jens is Mr. Hasan Arat. Hasan Arat is the Vice President of the Turkish Olympic Committee and also newly elected Executive Board member of the European Olympic Committee. In his business life, Hasan is the chairman of Capital Partners, which is one of the leading Turkish real estate development companies. But in this industry, Hasan Arat is probably more known as the chairman and leader of the Istanbul bid for the 2020 Olympic Games. So it'll be interesting to hear some of Hasan's experience from that campaign as well. And last but not least, Ingmar de Vos. Ingmar de Vos is the CEO and Secretary General of the International Equestrian Federation, FEI, based in Lausanne, Switzerland. And FEI is running more than 60 events on an annual basis, from very top-level events to more participation-based events. So we will also get the view from the international rights holder side on emerging cities, countries, opportunities, challenges, and how to get around that. The idea of this 1-hour session is that we will have a short opening statement from each of our panelists, and then I will throw some questions to the panel and to you in the audience, so that we would like to engage you from the very beginning. So maybe we start with you, Hessa. A few points on some of the major opportunities for emerging cities, countries in hosting major events, and some of the challenges that they could face.
Sure. Thank you, Lars. First off, I'd like to apologize. I'm a little bit sick today and just coming off of the 42nd National Day. And less than 10 days since Dubai has won the Expo 2020. This is a wonderful opportunity for us at the moment, because this is an example of an event that has recently come to Dubai and really putting Dubai and positioning it into around the world as an emerging host city, not only for sporting events, but events at large. So it's been an interesting time, and I apologize for everyone being slightly sick. It's very interesting that Dubai has a unique sort of drive forward, from the support and the visions of our leaders, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President of the UAE, Prime Minister and ruler of Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Chairman of the Dubai Sports Council, both of which really drive and really create this sort of passion from all the other entities involved in terms of staging events, whether it be sports or other events, and push the commitment of the communities at large. And for us in the sports sector, at least, we're very fortunate that we have such leaders that unite the entire emirate, the entire city, towards a common goal of creating Dubai as a sporting city, and a leading sporting city at that. And the Dubai Sports Council in and of itself is, what we do very much drives that forward. We, from the events that we stage, from the initiatives and programs that we create and develop for the different communities, we have 206 nationalities here, more than that even. And through sports, we're able to unite the communities, bring them in for a social atmosphere, and sort of drive the different events that we have, and move them into a more sort of sustainable sort of city. Of course, we have to be realistic, we have to adhere to some certain cultural and traditional norms that we have here, such as women in sports. The question that I ultimately get every time is, how do we integrate women in sports? That's one of the many questions. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about the city, and what Dubai Sports Council finds very actually fun, really, is how do we really do integrate it. We have to be creative in what sports that we attract to Dubai. And not only that, what kind of do we attract competitive type sports? Do we attract events such as conferences, exhibitions? And then in that, how do we integrate women? Events such as summer events that are typically held outdoor. We have to also adhere to our weather and conditions, realizing that perhaps we can move them indoors, perhaps we can change things around. So that's something that we find very exciting for us. Just like our leaders, we do not fear challenge. The Dubai Sports Council actually welcomes the challenges. The sky's the starting point, so we're moving forward, and we're very excited for the next few years to come.
Thank you. Excellent. It's interesting discussion about definition of emerging host cities, is whether Dubai is an emerging city. I mean, in some ways it is, in some ways it's already one of the most developed cities in the world. We could get back to that, but Jamil, many cities, regions in Africa would see themselves as emerging cities, regions. And how should they get about getting into the game?
Well, I think the first thing I would say African or the African nation should do is to learn about the process of bidding, the requirement, because if you do not understand what you're getting into, I'm sure you will have issues later on to success in your bid efforts. My understanding is many federations in Africa, or many cities, or many nations do not really understand the benefit they could get from bidding. And they do not also understand the challenges they might face in bidding. Sometimes they will just see that city X is bidding for the game, or another city has hosted the game, and they will get themselves into it. My feeling is, if the European nations, or I would say the most developed nation, do believe that by bidding or hosting the games, they could somehow, strengthen their development or faster their development. I think the developing nation would definitely need the game also to sort of get to where they want to get socially, economically, and in all other aspects. Taking their country from position 2 to position 10. If you want to develop today, I guess you can use sports to sort of reach your objective. But it needs to be strategized. If you don't have a clear vision, if you do not understand where you want to go, then you might face some problems. We've seen in the recent years that what we call the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have been positioning themselves to host, I would say, all major events such as the Olympic Games, the Commonwealth Games, and also the World Cup. And I think if we go back to South Africa, people have criticized maybe the fact that South Africa hosted the game and there was no clear legacy. But people tend to forget that the legacy is not something that you get the next day after you finish running your event. And you can see now that South Africa next month is hosting what we call the SHAN, which is the local African championship for the national team, for players that are playing in local leagues, because the country that was supposed to host it was having difficulties. And they were ready with the stadium that people were saying, yes, they have built too many stadiums and they're not being used. And I think this is an answer, a clear answer, that those stadiums can be used for international events or African events or even local events there. South Africa has done it also earlier with the African Championship when Libya had some trouble and they were ready to jump in. And that brought also economic benefit to the country in terms of, tourists coming in terms of hotels being filled in terms of, the image of the country. And I think that's something that is quite interesting. But where the danger is, and I'm going to be probably stopping there, hoping to get back later, where the danger is for our nation is to go for events that we cannot afford hosting. A few years ago, we had a case with Nigeria, for example, building a national stadium for about $330 million, which was more than the combined budget of health and education. And that made people upset. And in those conditions, your taxpayers will not support your effort to bid and bring hosts. So for us developing nation, if we bid for an event, if we host an event, we definitely should see some benefit, especially on the social aspect and on the economic aspect. And I think these are some challenges that we probably have a chance to share later on with the audience.
Thank you, very interesting. I'm sure we'll get back to that aspect of how developed does a nation need to be before we think it's allowed to spend money on sport and sports events. Is there a moral discussion here, a moral aspect that could also be included in this discussion? But Jens, so far most emerging cities, countries have focused on high-level, elite, high-profile events. Do you see maybe there would be a need for them to look into also participation events such as the Masters Games?
Well, for sure, participatory events is interesting for other perspectives than maybe so much getting in the media. They serve as tourism drivers for the cities or the countries. So it's a different way of raising awareness, which obviously all emerging nations would be interested in. And I think it's important, you asked previously, Lars, about some of the challenges that were out there, and I think from my experience and from what we see in Lausanne, where most of the federations are sitting, is that countries are not really aware of the amount of events out there. There are a huge amount of events available and many different levels, from obviously at the top tier from the Olympics and the Football World Cup and down to maybe more sports for all related events where participation is key. So, the challenge is probably to find out, what events are out there, and then, as Jamil mentioned, get a clear strategy of what you want to do, where you want to go, secure the funding, and then, go and visit the federations that are the right holders, or the individual rights holders of the various events, and find out what they want to do. Because the best way to do an event is if you can align your strategy with their strategy, then you actually get somewhere overall, and you can combine your resources to reach the common goals. So before you obviously create a strategy and all this, I see all the time when we speak to host cities that when they come and see us, they're not actually really aware of the facilities they have themselves, because you have a tendency to focus and say, we have a huge football stadium that can, 50,000 or 80,000 people can sit here, but you might have many other sports facilities that are far more suitable to other events that the right holders have to offer. So, you know, research is really the key, I think. And also you have to remember that us as rights holders do not necessarily know what you have to offer. So you have to as much sell your country to us before we even start a bid. Because first you have to clear the administration in each one of the federations and understand what is it actually we are looking for.
Yeah, thank you. Hassan, I remember during the 2-year bidding campaign, you very often said in a very good line that Turkey used to be bidding as an emerging, developing nation. Now, this time, Turkey is bidding as a developed nation. So, has Turkey emerged now as a major player in the event industry?
Lars, Turkey now is the 16th largest economy in the world, with the population of 75 million and 50% under the 25 years old, more than 20 million students. So it's a fantastic time for Istanbul to bid for the 2020 Games. This journey starts early 1990. In early 1990, in Istanbul there was no metro line. Today we have around 200-kilometer metro line, and it will be around more than 400 kilometers at the year of 2020. The government expectations of 2023, Turkey will be the 10th largest economy in the world. So this is a fantastic time to offer a bid from Istanbul, because that was the 5th bid of us, and we learned a lot during this journey. We invested a lot to the sports. We had so many international events like World Basketball, World Swimming Championship, World Indoor Athletic Championship, WTA. So really our main aim was to engage our young population to the sport. So Olympics always make big changes in the countries. When you look at Seoul, when you look at Tokyo, when you look at Barcelona, when you look at Atlanta, all these games really make big changes in the country. So our main focus was to get the games, to engage the young population more into the sports, and to have the successful event, and the legacy after the games would be the best part of the bidding. So we offer to the Olympic movement to have the games at the same time in Asia and in Europe. Imagine the rowers having competition in the Asian side and the basketball competition in the afternoon in the European side. There is nowhere in the world offering that type of games. And the infrastructure projects going on very strongly in Turkey, in Istanbul especially. So 1 month ago, we opened the first undersea railway tunnel which connects Asia to Europe, and which realized the Silk Road, so traditional Silk Road. And yes, we lost the competition to the final to Tokyo. I want to congratulate them. Also today I want to congratulate Dubai for 2020 Expo, and I hope it will be a great success for you and for your country. And what I see during this bid period, we learn a lot, especially engaging the private sector into the bid period with the public sector. So we learn a lot. I think Istanbul lost at the final, but Istanbul should remain for the future with this ambition.
Thank you. And we will ask Hassan before he leaves if they're going to bid for the next games. Ingmar, from your position as a rights holder, when you are approached by emerging cities, countries, what are your advice to them? Are you are encouraging them, or you are saying at the same time, but be aware of this? How do you see their opportunities and their challenges that they face?
Lars, thank you very much for the question. But before answering your question, I want to say that this kind of meetings is very interesting and important for us, because last year I was here and we established a contact with people of Rotterdam, and they are now bidding for an important championship. So that's nice. I think it's important for you to know. Secondly, I would say it's very simple. You know, when Hassan is making some publicity for Istanbul, and I love Istanbul as a city, I make some publicity for equestrian sport, because we are the best sport in the world. We are sport, we are passion, and we have a big economic impact, which is important. I come back to that. 3, your question about emerging cities. I even would say that emerging cities have an advantage over others, because when we look as an international federation, as a right holder, we want to develop our sport. So what is important for us is to go to other countries, especially to go to emerging cities, because this is going to spread our sport, create development, and that's really key for us. So I think they have even an advantage compared with the other ones. But what are for us now, what is now the situation today? I think as an international federation, what I see is that the bid books, and this is an important element in the whole bidding procedure, is a bid book, is establishing the criteria, the requirements, become more and more detailed. I would not say more complicated, I would say more detailed. It's offering to cities, to bidders, more information from the start. We try to avoid more and more surprises once they bid and the bid has been allocated. Secondly, I think also the involvement of the international federations became more and more important, because before, when, okay, you bid, you get the bid, it's allocated, and then we'll see you in 2 years or 3 years. Now, more and more, we consider it as our flagships, so we are involved from the start, together with the organizing committee, to organize the event, because it's key to us that it is a good event. 3, I think involvement of the government is important, because you cannot organize a big event without the community, and the community is voiced through the government, city, the regional government, the national government, whatever, but you need the involvement of the country, of the city, of the community. That's very important, and that's a key factor when you assess bidders. And then, I think you said it rightly, you know, you have different levels of events or sizes of events. You have the big events like, you know, Olympic Games, fantastic. Everybody, you know, this is a whole country standing behind it. But for us, the development in our sport, these smaller events are very important, because they are sometimes much more than big events, really key to develop, to get a legacy to the city, to the venue, to be sustainable for the sport, and that's important also. So I think there are a lot of balances, but let's try not to forget that equestrian is the most important sport, and I'm looking forward to receive the bid of Hassan for the next World Equestrian Games.
Very good. Well, getting into the game of bidding, one of the, from my experience, is one of the things that kind of counts is that a city has some experience. Rights holders are looking for experience. What if you don't have any experience as a city? It's the first time you host something. How do you get your first event? If you're a young graduate, how do you get your first job? The employers will ask for experience. You don't have any. It's hard to get the first job, and it must be hard to get the first event. Any advice from the panel on what could a city do if they don't have any experience? They desperately would like to host an event. What should they do? What's the argument?
Well,
the consultants will start.
The consultants start. Well, I would say it's important to ask yourself if that event you're going for is the right event, if the timing is right, And I've got a very good experience here from Dubai 2019 that we were talking about earlier, when they were bidding for the Asian Games 2019. And they were clearly, I would say, I was in the room. Everyone was ready to vote for Dubai. But at the end of the day, they decided not to go for it because they decided that they were not ready for that event. And I think this is very important for a city to be able to assess its bid, to assess its capacity, its readiness to go for that bid or not. The second thing is also to avoid, as a consultant, I would say, there's a lot of copy-paste. Mm-hmm. It's very easy today for someone to come and say, oh yes, you want to bid? All right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be doing it for you. So they will copy and paste things that will not be adjustable to your city, to your country. And therefore, if you go into it, I mean, there's chances, high chances that you will fail into getting that bid. The other thing is whether you're going for that for that bid to win for the first time. Mm-hmm. I think I've been working for maybe 5 or 6 bids, and it's only Sochi that I worked for, and they just won the first time. But there were probably a lot of situations that sort of helped them to win on the first time, but it's very difficult. So many bids, when they come in for the first time, they have to think about whether it's a positioning effort that they're doing or it's just a one-off. I think we could talk about Tokyo from 2016 to 2020, maybe Istanbul from 2020 to 2024. Hassan will tell us later on. But I think that's very important for the cities at the first time to have that clear vision, have that learning path set, avoid, just going for a bid just because you want to bid for something. You have to be clear about what you want to achieve.
Jens, when you receive a bid from a city that had never hosted any major events before, are you a bit like suspicious, or how do they get around that?
Well, I mean, we evaluate the cities on a slightly different, from a slightly different angle for us. Since our athletes pay themselves to participate in our events, it's actually, we have to create an event that we and the city can sell to the athletes. So we have to approach it from as much as a sports perspective. We have to look at the tourism side of it. And very often emerging nations actually have quite interesting tourism strategies that are far more developed than the sports strategies. Therefore, we look at it with interest because they represent an interesting destination for the athletes out there, for the older athletes. But I actually wanted to add to some of the things that Jamil said before, is that I think, of course, as I said previously, is that it's very important that you choose the events you want to, which events you want to have. But to have a constant dialogue with the event owners is important, because you'll be surprised on how many events out there that there are actually no bids running for, or a city has to step out because financially they can't handle it. So if you have a constant dialogue and you have the financing sorted, there will be events up for grabs that you can take instantly. Mm-hmm. And that's not everything is run on bids, which is I think is a very, very important point.
Ingmar, if you receive a bid from an equestrian event from a city that has never hosted any equestrian event on a certain level before, what do you think? How can they convince you?
Like I said in my introduction, I mean, they have a big advantage compared to the other ones, because for an international federation, development of the sport, and that means to grow worldwide, to find new territories, regions, is important. So we really welcome emerging cities bids or regions or countries or cities where we haven't had big events before. As I said, more and more international federations become professional in establishing very clearly the bid requirements. I mean, so there is less discussion about what do you need, what is really needed to host the event. So it's more and more about how can this contribute to the development of our sport. And I can tell you, for us, this is key. We prefer we have fantastic events in Europe, and Aachen, I think, is one of the most or the biggest equestrian events in the world. But we as an international federation, we are very happy with Aachen, fine. But we are, for our sport and our development, going somewhere else is much more important in the end.
Good. A little in line with that, about getting over the hurdle for new cities to enter the game, the market here, do you think, like in general terms, that new cities, new countries, emerging places are judged a little harder than more experienced cities? Like, will the right holders be a little more, let's ask a few more questions, let's put a little tougher evaluation on city X because they are new compared to city Y because they have a lot of experience? Did you feel that, Hassan, when you were competing against Madrid, bid last time, Tokyo, previous host, and Turkey Istanbul was it emerging city? Did you feel that you had to prove yourself harder, more?
No, the main obstacle is the bidding rules. You know, if IOC members will bid for a city, they should see and they should visit the city. Most of the members who doesn't see even Istanbul, how can they vote? So the bidding city rules has to be changed. So IOC should give a chance to its members to visit the city, to understand the city conditions. I mean, you can say from here that Turkey is a developing country. For me, no, it's a growth opportunity country. We are already developed. When you look at our education system, when you look at our health system, Turkey investing a lot to these sections. Now, it is time for us to move into the sports more globally, and the international organizations, as you said, should give this opportunity to new growth markets, to new territories, to new people, to feel the same atmosphere as the other big cities in the world. So what I would suggest for the future, IOC should give the chance to its members to visit the bidding cities. And the cities and the countries should also stay in the Olympic family and the international federations family, to engage more, to have more international events, to send their members to their organizations, to engage more with their operations, and not to stay aside and wait for the bidding. No, this is a long-term and continuous project. If you have a feeling that one day you can do this organization, then you have to plan in a different way. This vision is so important. I think Turkey and Istanbul now have this vision, and our government, our private sector, and our young population was very happy that we were at the finals, and they were so proud that we did our best. And they were very proud about our presentation. So I think that was just a final. You may lose, you may win, but we will continue with that ambition.
Do you feel, that you talked about women in sport in Dubai, and the Dubai Sports Council is motivating more women to do sport, that if Dubai would be bidding for a women event, that you would have to argue stronger and better than more established cities in Europe or North America where women's sport are more established, that you have a little harder time convincing the rights holders?
I don't think so. Not in Dubai's case, and for the simple reason that Dubai has proven itself time and time again through the different events that we've staged, not necessarily for women, but just events in general. But in respect to women, you know, participating in sports, just like my fellow panelists up here have said, there's certain steps that are required for emerging cities to take into consideration when bidding for events. And as I said previously, we have to be creative and innovative in the types of sports or events, really, that we target, especially for women, you know, because it is a cultural sort of custom that we have to adhere to and have to be realistic that, you know, competitive sports for women is something that we have to be sensitive about. So perhaps not go for a competitive event. Why not a conference or an exhibition or a congress, something different, something more tailored, for instance, to community development and engaging women in sports on a community level, encouraging families to come in and, you know, basically, and in essence, to spread the awareness of physical activity, because is that really what, you know, it depends on what our goal is. Yep. If that is our goal, then that is another way of, you know, another approach to it. But again, there's a lot of steps that need to take into consideration. What is our strategy? What is our overall strategy? What is the approach? What is our methods to get to where we want to go? And the type of sports that we want to secure, and the way that we're going to get there. You know, we have to be realistic. It's not going to happen overnight. It has to be, you know, a long-term sort of goal. But it is something that you know, the Dubai Sports Council understands, and taking into a lot of consideration as we're moving forward, securing different international events for the future.
Yeah. Well, I'll turn to the audience also now. Any comments from the audience on 2 points, or questions to the panel on any advice how to get the first job, how to get the first event if you are new in this market? Any way, advice from your side or experience how to overcome that hurdle of having, please state your experience, I don't have any kind of. And secondly, do you think that emerging cities, countries are judged a little harder? They need to be a little more convincing when they are competing in about the same event, when they're competing against more experienced host cities. Any comments from anyone in the audience who wants to comment on that, or have a question for something that we have heard from the panel?
Lars, in the back. All the way in the back.
We have a microphone. Yeah, please.
Hi, Paulette Hébert for Around the Rings. 2 things that haven't really been highlighted is the fact that if it is your first time, you first of all have to manage your expectations and to do an inventory of what you actually have, rather than to just be looking at the Olympic model constantly and wanting to build new and bigger facilities. A master plan is also another thing that hasn't been mentioned up to now. I mean, start small and go through the learning process, make it better each time, and eventually, and again, not every city needs to be bidding for Olympic Games or World Expo. Be fair to yourself, I think, is what I would say to smaller emerging markets.
Thank you. Anyone? Jens, please.
Yeah, no, I thought I would make a comment that I actually think in the current financial situation worldwide, there's huge opportunities for emerging countries in many of the Western European cities that maybe traditionally were bidding for bigger events. The political shift about how the finances have to be used are going away from mega events, and that leaves big opportunities out there. As an example, for instance, I think you would never say that, you know, Greece and maybe Portugal, Italy, to some extent Spain, are emerging nations, but yet I think all rights holders now are aware that there is a certain risk of not being paid if you have your events in those countries. So I actually think that there is very good opportunities out there at the moment.
Good. Any other comments at this stage or questions? Yep.
Yeah. My name is Mansour Al-Toki from Oman. I do agree with the ideas that there is a lot of events out there in the world that the emerging cities could really select what is suitable to their situation or their financial status. I wanted to just throw out an idea about the international sport governing bodies to put some events are solely for these emerging cities to compete or to bid for. So they will have a fair competition with other cities for the future. I don't know if you got the idea. I mean, for international governing bodies to select certain events for emerging cities to compete among each other. So they will have a fair competition between them. And then they will get the experience to host or to go for the bigger events.
That's a good point. Would that be something to help cities getting into the game, new places? You select some specific events and saying, we reserve that event to be hosted by a new city, and then we select one there. Ingmar?
I listen to what you say, but I don't agree. I think you should not. I always feel like emerging cities, are they a bit ashamed, or do they see themselves as less important, or no? I would say on the contrary, and that was a statement I wanted to make from the beginning. You have much more opportunities. You have, you know, a blank sheet for us as an international federation in the development of our sport is much more interesting than a book. Because we can work together from scratch, we can develop the sport, there are much more opportunities. Okay, there are some basic things that need to be met. We need some financial guarantees, we need, you know, but everybody needs to do that. I mean, if these things are met, then you are in a better position than the other ones, because for an international federations, your bid is much more important and interesting than the one who has already a book like that and has done everything. So I don't agree with you. And maybe it's hard as a statement, but no, I don't agree. You have much more to go for.
Jimmy?
Well, sorry, I think I tend to somehow agree with the proposal. There is the issue of universality of sports, universality of participation. And the biggest issue today is the issue of, one, privilege, because if you look at the Olympic Games, it's owned by a group, and they do have certain privilege. When you say, I'm taking the Olympic Games to, let's say, Oman, because it's from Oman, automatically some people might think, oh, if we go to Oman, maybe the service level is not going to be the same as country X. Or if I take it to Paraguay, maybe the service level is going to be different. So that risk factor is an issue. The other issue also is, if you take a sport like your sports, it has some issue because the issue of quarantine. There are countries that definitely will never be able to host equestrian event because of quarantine issues. So is that fair? I don't know. And that's something that we need to really think about today. Do we need to categorize the event? Yes, and maybe we say, you know, emerging nations or cities have to grow, I mean, starting from smaller to bigger. The steps that they have to go through to reach the bigger event, I think, is very important. You cannot just start with the Olympic game. You need to start with a regional championship, with a continental championship. I think that's probably the idea behind what he was throwing there. And we need also to categorize what we mean by emerging cities. Istanbul was defined by emerging, like as an emerging. Hassan clearly said that they are not emerging, they've already emerged. So these are issues that we need to discuss and agree. Otherwise, I think this debate is going to be there for 20 years, and we will never have any solution that would, you know, help us go into, you know, move forward. And the last thing is, to come back to your question, I think there's one period that is very, very important, which is the period before you decide to bid. You know, if the bid is open for 2014, you cannot start your strategy on 2013. You need to think about it way before, attracting events. I think Istanbul, even though they did not win, because it would have been a problem if Istanbul won for me, because I was a competitor. But I think you did well in attracting many international events in Istanbul, because there was question, like, they don't have experience, they cannot host it. When you had the swimming championship, the basketball championship, you can tell to people, see it yourself. And I think that's something that is important also for cities that want to go for big events.
Interesting aspect. Unfortunately, time is running, and somebody will soon start to wave at me. Yeah, it is there. So kind of last question here is, and also for the floor, for the audience, we kind of agree, all of us, that, and Ingmar formulated it very nicely, that maybe being new and emerging is a strong argument. It's better than being old and tested somehow. But still, even though there's so much talk about events are moving to new regions, challenging the borders of traditional sports events, somehow we also hear about that there's a certain, at least on Olympic level, a certain touch of moving to new regions fatigue. And one of the arguments of Tokyo, the main argument was we are a safe pair of hands, meaning we are tested, give it to us. Did you feel like Hassan that, and you were promoting like an emerging or a new thing, that maybe there has been so many events, major events, moving to new regions, Olympic Games, World Cup football will move, that there's somehow a need to say, okay, let's just stay for the next 4 or 8 years in more tested markets, which would not be to the benefit of emerging nations?
The Olympic Games mainly have a great impact to the people's life. If you don't go to the new territories, you are losing the new growth opportunities. When you are talking about the growth opportunities, when you look at the regions, especially young people nowadays having so much engagement with computers, with the other things, so we have to really think very carefully how to engage young people into the sports. So our main vision was that, to engage our young people to the sports and give this effect to the region, to the Middle East, to the Central Asia, to the Balkans. So give them an opportunity to create their own heroes. So that was very important for us. And I'm so happy that Baku will host 2015 European Games. And in our region, there is a lot of developments, but don't forget, these people need to have their heroes. So that gives them a hope, especially in the region of the Middle East, having a lot of problems. You cannot say, you are not safe, please wait aside and we will give you a chance when you solve your problems. No, you give them a chance and you give them a hope and let them think their political leaders to solve their problems. Without giving them a chance, you can just ignore them. If these countries really try to get these games, these international organizations happen in their countries, don't judge them for today's problems, because games will be in the 7 years time period. So we have been affected about that. You know, we have been affected about the problem of the Syria conflict, because we had 1 million refugees and our government helped them to build up hospitals, to build up education, to really help those people, because they are our people, they are our neighbors. We have to help them. So at the end, people are judging us that you have a problem in your region. No, we are helping with this problem. If the international sport authorities give the chance to this region, then these people will have chance. So sport is the best thing for people really to believe, to have in their life, to hope for the future. So
yep. Thank
you. There is always a problem about the perception.
Hessa, would you like at Dubai, if you think, would you move your argumentation now more Dubai, we are very experienced, we are very developed, or we are emerging in today's environment of bidding? Where would you focus?
I think, personally, I would put us, more towards, we've already sort of come off of the emerging city, but we're not there yet, in terms of, for instance, the Londons and Melbournes of the world, we are getting there. And again, I've said before, we have to be realistic at our current situations and sort of understand what it takes to get to, a higher level of events. But it's something that Dubai is very much getting involved in. The Dubai Sports Council is driving it, and we're very excited about what's going to come next. So for sure, it's going to be a great time in the next few years.
Excellent. One last question? Yep. Or do we have another question? We can have two maximum.
Hello.
Okay.
Just a comment, Frederick Lindgren from the European Tour in golf. First of all, we're very happy to be working with Dubai for the 25 years. I think if we go back to Oman is a new country for this year. We are very happy to be there also on the Challenge Tour. I think in terms of talking about what is the second prize for a big event or going for a big bid, Ingmar is quite right. There are a lot of opportunities if you go into singular sports where you might have the facilities, you might have the athletes that can compete in them, where you start. I mean, you might have lost out on a big bid, but there are many other sports like equestrianism, golf, tennis, where Dubai has shown leading the way in terms of hosting, starting with the tennis, or starting with the golf, of course, and then going into other sports and becoming a very experienced host. So by no means is it that you have to always go for the big trophy, and then if you lose, there's nothing. I mean, we have the Ryder Cup, which is our big trophy, and we tend to come back to the same countries then and doing other events if they don't host the Ryder Cup. The first year, this year in Turkey, we had an extremely successful event, the Turkish Airlines Open, we're looking forward to have a long-term relationship in Turkey where we can together build up a fantastic experience in running professional golf tournaments. So, thank you.
Thank you. And yes, I'm told to stop. So, Hassan, are you back for 24? Are you back for 2024? I promised to ask you the question.
That's not my money, that's the government decision. So I wish, but it will be the government decision.
Okay, thank you. Let's give a big applause to our panel. Thank you.